Welcome back, everybody. Author Alison Tucker shares a moving account of her experience with cancer in a newly released debut memoir titled My Best Worst Year, a breast cancer story. Published just in time for the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which is being observed annually in October, the book details Tucker's own personal journey of being diagnosed with the disease. She also opens up about what her life was like before she received that dreaded phone call from a pathologist telling her that she's been diagnosed with breast cancer. Well, to help us unpack her story as she shares it in the book, Alison is now joining me via Skype from Durban. Alison, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Simpiwe, from a lovely sunny Durban today.
It can't be as hot as Johannesburg, though. But anyway, the show will continue. As I've mentioned that this book comes at a time of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, what would you say is perhaps the biggest influence that propelled you to share your story in this book?
Simpiwe, I kept a gratitude diary right through my cancer treatment, and it was a way of me trying to stay positive during a tough time. And slowly over time, I realized that I was demystifying cancer or breast cancer for people who were engaging with this gratitude diary. And then people started contacting me and asking me for tips and sharing tips with me. So I just felt compelled to write the book as a way of helping other people and also as an act of gratitude for the great positive experience I had had myself.
Let's go back to how it started and take us back to that moment when your doctor called you to break the news that you actually have breast cancer.
Yes, it was the day before Christmas in 2016.
Really?
And I had lots of exciting plans and holidays and things online. And I answered the phone and I heard that I had cancer. So when I put the phone down, I thought, now what do I do? But I got in my car and I drove to the hairdresser because I had an appointment in 10 minutes' time. And once I sat down in the hairdresser's chair, that's when it really hit me. And I realized that I was from then on going to be a cancer patient for the rest of my life. Because there's BC and AC, before cancer and after cancer. And once you're a cancer patient, you are a cancer patient for life.
So did you feel your world crumbling down, or you were just of the view that you will definitely beat this cancer?
At that moment, I was absolutely stunned and in a shake of shock, because what you do think is when you get a cancer diagnosis, you just think, well, I'm going to die and I'm going to have to curl up in bed and be sick for the time of my treatment. But I was so pleasantly surprised because I really was able to have quite a productive and enjoyable life right through my treatment. I was able to continue working. I was able to continue exercising. That was a big part of me keeping it together and being able to get through it successfully.
Now, just take us through the days leading up to you going for the biopsy and the lumps in your breast that had felt a little different and a little unusual to the ones you felt before.
Yes, so my sister Michelle had had breast cancer before me, about 25 years before me. And so I had started going for mammograms from the age of 30 onwards. And in this case, I was getting close to the time for my annual mammogram. But what happened is I had this very odd feeling on the side of my breast, and it felt like a dense mass as opposed to a movable lump that I had felt before. So I felt suspicious, and then the mammogram and the ultrasound actually confirmed it. But it's really important for women, or men as well, because men also get breast cancer, really important to have your annual checks. Because it can make a big difference in what happens going forward after that.
And let's talk about your life prior to receiving the dreaded news from a pathologist. You say that your life was not without exposure to cancer. What did you mean by this?
Yes, that was because my sister had had breast cancer.
Okay.
So I had seen her 25 years beforehand with cancer. In fact, she had cancer twice.
Okay.
And she went through chemotherapy twice. And I saw what she experienced in those days. And I expected I would experience the same thing. But I think science has moved on. And really, I wasn't nauseous during my chemotherapy. I had very bad days, of course. But really, it was a manageable experience compared to what I had seen that she had been through personally all that time before that.
And speaking of bad days, I mean, you go on to say that the year after your treatment, which you refer to as the aftermath, it was surprisingly challenging. Tell us more about that. I would imagine the chemotherapy sessions were really, really daunting for you.
So my chemotherapy sessions were actually a lot of fun, believe it or not, and people might think that's strange. But I had a friend, Shelley, who came to every single chemotherapy with me, and we used to chat and laugh, and the other patients were wonderful, so we made new friends, and the nurses were great as well. So it was actually it was a positive experience. But the aftermath of cancer is something people don't always think about, and for me, the year after my treatment was probably harder than the treatment year itself. So, I was on a drug, a hormone blocker, because of the kind of cancer I had, and that came with all side effects. And then you're a different person. So you're going through trying to grow hair. Your nails are messed up and damaged from the chemotherapy. You're trying to get the physical ravages of cancer gone.
Sure.
But emotionally it's difficult because you expect it to be the same person as you were before, and you aren't. And you don't want to talk about it all the time and bore people, but it's a big part of your world, that aftermath.
Sure. And I suppose we can never overemphasize the importance of a support structure when one is diagnosed with cancer. I mean, and the role that your support tribe played in your journey.
Absolutely. I was very, very blessed. I had lots of friends and lots of family that rallied around and made my year a very special one. But I'm well aware that there are people out there who have a cancer diagnosis who do not have as much support. There's a lot of people don't always understand cancer, so there are misconceptions. Some people even think that you can catch cancer from someone else. So people have a very tough time if they don't have the support system that I had.
And in the beginning of the book, you start with sharing some of the tips that help you cope with your breast cancer. Do share some of those tips?
So one of my biggest tips, I always say to cancer patients, if I can give you one piece of advice, is to just keep moving.
Okay.
Doesn't mean to say you have to run marathons, but it is to literally just keep moving. If it means you can only on one day walk around your house or walk around the block, even that, just do it. So I thought I was, I was going to have to give up my gym membership. I was going to have to stop running. But actually, I ran throughout, and I continued to achieve my vitality points for every single week, except the week of my surgery. So keeping on moving is a really important one. And then another one, a bit more lighthearted, is you actually need a sense of humor, because there are very funny stories that happen along the way as a cancer patient, especially when you're wearing wigs. I wore wigs, and I had lots of amusing tales, some of which I've written about in the book as well.
Okay.
So sometimes you just have to take a lighthearted look at things.
Yeah. And for those who've lost all hope, I mean, what would you say to them? I mean, what is it that you had embraced? Because there's obviously a positive aspect of your life that you can always embrace and look forward to.
Yes. I think there were times where I didn't know what my outcome was going to be, especially in the early stages before I had my full diagnosis. And one does think about death. I would be lying if I didn't say that I did think, well, maybe I'm going to die. In my case, once I knew all the facts around the kind of cancer I had, I knew that there was a possibility that I could survive. But I'm well aware that there are a lot of people who get terminal cancer, or there are a lot of breast cancer patients who have breast cancer with what they call METs, in which case they are automatically stage 4, and it is not curable, and they will be having treatment for the rest of their lives, however long or short that may be. And it's very difficult for me to put myself in their shoes and say, what works for them. I'd love you to have a METS breast cancer patient on air sometimes so they can talk about it from their experience. I did come to terms with the possibility of death. I had 2 experiences which helped me get my head around it. But I'm sure it's very tough for people who know that they are terminal.
Sure, but Alison, you're so brave, hey. And you say that this book should not be viewed as a source of medical advice. What do you mean by this?
Not at all. Not at all, Simpiwe. The book is just one woman's story. And every cancer patient has their own story to tell. And every patient has a different experience. So there's a kind of chemo called the Red Devil, which is quite a toxic kind of chemo, and I fared pretty well on that. I fared a little bit less well on the second kind of chemotherapy that I had, which was the paclitaxel. Other people may have a completely different experience. So it really is very individual. And I'm also well aware that I'm quite a positive person and I had a positive experience. But I don't expect supporters of cancer patients to just expect that the people they're supporting would also be having a positive experience.
Yeah. You know, Alison, for those cancer survivors and cancer patients, your positive outlook in life will really, really rub off on them in a very positive way. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Sampiwe. Thank you.
Wow, there we go. That was author Alison Tucker. She's been speaking to us about a book, a memoir titled My Best Worst Year, a breast cancer story, where she shares her personal and authentic account of battling with the disease. It is 7:44. Let's go for coffee.